Hi, my name is Kevin Fleming from Grupo Mariana. I'm the chairman, the founder of and developer of Playa Mariana here in Nicaragua. You're listening to me today because you have an interest in internationalization, which could be born from your interest to live, invest, retire, earn income, or even diversify your assets overseas. Myself, I've been involved with Nicaragua for 20 years. And you want to pay attention to me today because I am the person who has started from nothing with no money, purchased close to 1,000 acres of land and 3.5 kilometers of beachfront over the last 20 years. I've had the privilege of meeting thousands of people from around the world in over 100 different stage presentations. Our work has been featured in the LA Times, the New York Times, the International Herald Tribune. We've worked with team members, global team members of over 30, 35 people with names such as Nicholas Design, that's Jack Nicholas, Wyndham Hotel Group, Kemper Sports, Earl Swenson Associates, Land Design. During our process of purchasing land, I've spent well over $10 million in lessons learned in due diligence and how to come about a project from the ground up and buying real estate for the first time. In addition to that, and probably most important, why you should listen to me is I was brought to Nicaragua from a local Nicaraguan that I married, but I didn't marry her in Nicaragua. I met her in Vancouver, Canada. So I'll give you the short story in the case that you don't already know. It was 2003, August. I met a woman, and she literally took my breath away the first night I met her. And within 5 minutes, she told me that she was graduating university. She was in her last year and she's moving to Nicaragua. I knew what that meant. She was not interested in some guy picking her up at a restaurant and getting involved in a relationship because she's leaving. But that didn't stop me. So as soon as she said that, I said, crazy people aren't scared of anything. Tell me more about Nicaragua. 3 hours later, okay, 3 hours later, meeting her by chance that evening, I was in love with the concept of Nicaragua. And so it wasn't too long after that, we went on a first date. It was 4 months later in January, I asked her to marry me in 2004. And in November of 2004, the same year, I got married in Nicaragua. My first time stepping into a Latin American country. All I had was a suitcase for a month, preparing for a honeymoon destination and a wedding abroad, carrying my wife's wedding dress, which I hadn't seen at the time, and dropping into country and getting married. And actually, there was a civil wedding and a church wedding. So an amazing experience. And since that day, we have been on the hunt for real estate, not so much now, but back then, to create an international project in Nicaragua that, from a North American standpoint of view, due diligence being the most important, we could provide the security for people to buy real estate. So that is a very short story. There's a lot of stories in between. Now, you're here today because you might be a real estate investor. You might be a real estate agent looking for listings. You might be seeking to park some capital outside the country, but at the same time, use a property that you want to buy and stick it in a rental program afterwards. You could be looking at the idea of international investment as a retirement destination. So you have some time on your hands to plan ahead and buy something now and hold it to later. And that is generally where most people fall into the category who are going to watch this presentation and watch this video to the end. Now, you're here because you may be drowning in information, and my job is to shortcut that process for you, distilling 20 years of experience into something that is verifiable and you can rely and depend upon and put a process in place that's going to help you move forward. And that's why you want to listen to this, because at the end of today's presentation, and certainly when you watch presentation 1 and 2, in challenge day 1, I help you to understand how to shortcut the process of looking at 100 countries down to 3. And I was really trying to distill the concept that more information is simply not better. What you need to be thinking about is eliminating information and applying a filter. And that filter has a certain number of criteria that you want to look at. And what does criteria mean? It could mean like a paved road or non-paved road, or an hour from the airport, or 3 hours. solid things that are really important to you. It could even be schools for your kids or hospitals, in case you need a defibrillator, where you're going to go for an emergency. Hard criteria that will quickly help you eliminate at least 75 out of 100 countries within 5 minutes, so your brain doesn't get overwhelmed. And then when you look at the challenge replay 2, we got into how do you pressure test that filter? How do you look upon the next step where you find a country and then you want to dig deeper into what is taking place in the country? And we focus a lot on safety, but the idea around safety in day 2 was to help you understand that safety is not just, is it dangerous in the country? Safety, as it applies to buying real estate, safety to me is one, yes, that's part of it, the safety of the country, but more importantly is structure. How well has the structures of the government been tested? How well has the projects been tested? And safety and investing money or choosing a country, the principal thing that you want to take away from day 2 is shit happens. You're going to experience problems wherever you are, whether it be with the government or whether it be with the politics or whether it be with the project or whether it be development timelines or financial crashes. Problems arise. So the important thing is not to worry so much about what's going to happen into the future. You really want to take a closer look of the past and see how similar problems or exact problems were handled. Did the structures of the government or the development or the project survive? What did they do? Because that is a really good predictor of what's going to happen into the future, because problems will arrive. So you can't come into these international waters thinking that everything is going to be perfect. Now, before we continue, whether you're watching on Zoom or for my audience on TikTok, I'd like to know what you think about that. Does that make sense? If you could type a Y into the chat or give me a heart or like, show me that you're engaged, you're watching this, that makes sense. And then I'm going to get into today's presentation right now, which is day 3. And this is very interesting because yesterday, I had this plan. That the first day was how to take the world and break it down into 3 countries. And then within those 3 countries, what are the things you should look at to overcome safety? Because it's usually the number one objection. So being that I've talked to so many people and we've sold so many properties and we have so much land, I was about to get into the due diligence process today and talk about all the things that you really need to know when buying land, because this presentation today, you're listening to me wherever you came from, because this is the one country way challenge. And you might apply that to living and investing, but more specifically, how to buy real estate overseas and avoid the common mistakes that people make, because that's my specialty. I'm the expert there. And being that I'm a real estate developer for the last 20 years during all kinds of crazy times, okay, good times, bad times, financial crashes, smear campaigns, pandemic, COVID, we've been through a lot. I'm going to tell you what no real estate developer or real estate agent wants you to know. I keep saying that because it's really, really important, because it may not only be because they don't want to tell you, but they may not know what to tell you. And the problems that I've seen over the years, they really come from you not knowing what you don't know. Of course, right? You've heard that before, right? You don't know what you don't know. And so I'm trying to help bring some things to light that just give you a different way of looking at things, thinking about things, and having an open mind. So dialing back, I was going to talk about due diligence today, but I changed my entire presentation last night. I made 5 notes, 5 questions that I'm going to literally ask myself and answer as best I can, and give you some personal examples along the way, how they relate. Now, yesterday I kind of got off topic a little bit, but all the information was good. So I'm going to try and stay focused and direct. So your time today it's going to be worth it. So I want to get started right away. Is everybody ready? Is everybody ready? You ready in chat? Give me a check mark, a yes. Type yes into the chat. Show me you're active. Otherwise, I'm going to lose you. All right. You need to be interested in this stuff. So today is about the number one reason why most developers, including me, have not sold more real estate than we have. And it's because of the spouse, whether it be the husband, whether it be the wife, whether it be the kids. Normally what happens is you find something to investigate and you go about doing it all on your own. And you get to the point where you want to buy, okay, and we're talking about buying real estate, so I'm going to focus on real estate. You get to the point where you want to buy, and then this big, huge objection comes, all right? And it's the spouse, all right? And they're like, no, don't think so. Too much money, too risky, too far. You've heard all the excuses, I'm sure. For those of you that are watching this presentation, anywhere from around the world, you've probably heard that. In fact, I can tell you, I've heard that excuse 3 times in the last 3 weeks. And that's what it is. It's an excuse. But it's more than an excuse. It's a signal. All right. And so today, the entire framework of the presentation, okay, I don't want to say it's how to convince, persuade, sell, manipulate your spouse into agreeing with you. That's not the premise of today. The premise of today is how do you approach things in a way in which is respectful, not to convince, okay, but to provide safety and security and protection to your spouse in the information that you found, because both of you are right. Both of you are looking at things from your own perspective. One might have more information than the other. Most certainly, the perception that each individual is going to have is going to be different. And there needs to be a process to come together. All right. So, what we want to try and avoid is the hype on headlines, their narratives that people might see, the preconceptions that the individual has. We want to get down to more evidence-based research and looking at what that evidence is and what that signals. So the first part of today really is to help you become signal literate, literature, signal literate. That's what I want to say. Okay. So the goal here is to talk about what signals do experienced investors watch, okay, that the media ignores. Okay. So that's the topic here. The topic here is how do you, sitting from wherever you are, watching this or listening to it on a podcast, or what do you look for within countries that are going to help you notice the real things that are going to be valuable for you to know? Here's a prime example. Yesterday, I'm in Nicaragua. So in Nicaragua, and I want to be clear, you're watching this presentation right now. We're only into it a few minutes. There's nothing for sale at the end of this presentation. There's nothing for sale, even at the end of day 5. So you can relax. Don't feel like you're going to be thinking like, I know he's going to sell me something. I know he's going to sell me something. There's nothing for sale. This is just pure information to help you. Okay. So I lost my train of thought. Okay. So getting back online, the signals to watch out for. Yesterday, I was talking to an individual, and from a Nicaraguan standpoint of view, I was really excited about the entire highway that's going through the country. It's an amazing opportunity for the country. But putting aside the highway, what that really means is it's infrastructure. The number one signal that you want to watch for, that capital moves into country first before the headlines come after, right? Because the media reports on what happens, but it's the capital that determines where and what things are going to. So when you're looking in a country, things like new airports, coastal highways, new developments, auto dealerships being built and constructed, 1 lane into 2 lanes on the major highways, or 2 lanes into 3, or when you go outside the general municipality area of the main capital city that you fly into, the roads are amazing because usually the capital flows before all the people come, because no one's making this investment for nothing. Now, there are other market signals that you can pay attention also. All right, so that makes sense, right? Can you see how if you look for where big infrastructure is being spent in a country, that's a really good signal to watch for. So when you start to eliminate 100 countries down to 3 and you start applying your filter, that look for infrastructure and a signal, that's part of your filter, okay? You're looking for signals because very quickly you'll find out what are the major construction projects in the country. Are there new hotels going in? What is some of the investment? What's under construction? The bigger the project, the more noise they're going to have. Now, to add to that and staying on the experienced investors, yesterday I touched upon it And Monday I touched upon it, but it's important to say it again in the case we have new people watching this. The big money looks at countries and where they're going to invest by four main criteria. There's more, but the four main ones are safety. Okay, and that's both safety in regards to violent crime and structures tested, both projects and government. Location, meaning where is the region located? So, for example, Nicaragua, it's 2 hours from Miami, 3 hours from Houston. How many direct flights come in? Which airlines come in? Spirit, United, okay, American. They look for those type of things because you want to be able to move people easily. The next one is tourist opportunities. When people come into the country or big money is going to invest in projects, I'll speak specifically to real estate. They want to know that people aren't going to feel trapped simply staying within the resort development or the community that they're going to be in. There are things for people to go out and do. All right. So the more things there are to do, the better that country looks upon people putting money into projects. And four is that foreign investment. Is the country attracting foreign investment into the country? Are they bringing in capital from, let's say, from a Nicaraguan standpoint of view, a lot of money from China? If you're looking at other countries, where's money flowing into and where's it coming from? That's a really good sign because it shows confidence within the country. Now, that's a lot to kind of absorb. All right. I had to go around the world, and attend 100 stage presentations and been to a lot of conferences to distill all that. But it doesn't matter what conference you go to, when you peel back those layers of the onion, that's what they're talking about there. So put those in your filter of things to look for. Now, I want to clarify. I'm not here today to sell you on Nicaragua, but I may use it as an example only because my experience over the last 20 years here is something that you can take and you can apply to any country. Okay. It will work because the likelihood that the experiences that I'm having, I'm not the only one, and certainly not the only one in a country having these experiences. So moving forward. Now, I'm going to give you an idea. Here's, you guys ready for a story? Can I tell you a story? When you're looking to buy real estate in a project, yesterday I talked about the importance of asking the question, where's the money coming from? So I'm not going to cover that again. You have to watch the replay. But I want to build upon that and give you a sense that when you're looking into a project, once you understand where the money's coming from or the financing, it's really important to look at the inventory of what is being sold. And that's important because, for example, let's say you want to buy a beachfront lot, and the beachfront lot is one of 100 of the same typical types of product, or it's a golf course lot, or it's a ranch lot. And your objective in buying real estate might be for an investment to sell it. So you need to look at the amount of inventory that's going to be for sale to really see what is your competition when you want to resell it. Will you be reselling it against other people in the market? Or will you have paid $50,000 or $100,000 for a property? The market has tanked, and the developer still has 75 lots out of 100, and now he's selling the lots for like $25,000 because he can. And then you're stuck with your property. One of the better pieces of advice that I can tell you would be it is really good to buy inside developments or international property when the limited amount of inventory is really scarce. It's because you're not going to be in competition with the developer. And in the resale market, it's going to be easier and quicker for you to sell your property, providing the market is there, all things being equal. All right. So that's just a little tip, a little pro tip when you start looking at real estate. So experienced investors look for that. But not only that, but the money that comes in to fund these developments, they also look for that in the development of the master plan and how that master plan is created to create uniqueness that will differentiate the particular project that you're interested in versus others, which brings more value. Now, tomorrow, pay attention, we're actually going to my site in Masachapa, Nicaragua, and I'm going to be giving you day 4 live due diligence. I'll be walking around the project and really explaining to you why due diligence matters, what are the questions to ask. So you're not going to want to miss that. But when you go back on the replays of day 1 and 2 to catch up, you're going to quickly realize some of the things that I said where this builds upon, and it will come and make a lot of sense to you. All right. And we've had a lot of investors over the years, especially big money investors. I remember, let me tell you about a story. This is a development story, okay? In 2009, I still remember it was about April, May 2009. This was after the financial crash. And we were no different than many of projects that suffered from the lack of a market to sell into, and people with money had the surplus inventory of product on the market. So I figured what would be a good idea is to attract an investment bank. And so my wife thought I was a little bit nuts because this was after the crash. Our funds were tight. We maybe had $40,000 in the bank from a company standpoint of view. Like we just spent $7 million. And we got caught with our pants down with $2.5 million in contracts and cash flow that were wiped out overnight when the crash came. So I found this investment bank that was really popular at the time. The name was Convex Capital. And I contacted them, explained to them my situation. They were like, yeah, wonderful, great. Me being inexperienced as I was at the time, I was like, yes, an investment bank wants us, a bank that has raised, tens of millions of dollars for the projects. So I flew to London. Met with them, signed an agreement, and we brought them on board. But the retainer was $25,000. So they got to work right away, and they created this nice brochure. Then they're right about to start to distribute the information memorandum to their clients. And I got hit with this, but Kevin, listen, before we do it, do you have the feasibility study? And if you're not sure what that is, it's about a 50-page document that looks upon your project, outlines the components and the elements into a financial spreadsheet, compares that to the market intelligence of the region and other similar projects like you, and they present it to their investors. And I was like, nope, don't got that. I mean, I knew what it was unofficially, but not a 50-page thing professionally done by King Sturge or I'm going blank on the name of the company. It's even bigger in the United States. CB Realty, I think, something like that. So of course I contact them and I get a quotation, and these things cost $50,000 to create. Can you imagine that? I just paid $25,000 and they want 50 more. I didn't have 50 more. Okay. I barely even had $10,000 left in the bank after my trip to London. In fact, if you talk to my wife, she'll thought that was a huge mistake. It turns out she was right. So, but it did give us a lot of good information in creating what it is that we knew went into the program. Then I was just able to create it myself. Now, I tell you that story because when you're looking at a development for purchase, understanding where the money comes from, the signals of investors, when you see investment banks getting into a project, it's a good thing, but it could be a bad thing as well. And the key caution point there that no one will tell you is most of the projects that are financed or you're going to raise capital that's going to bring it into the project, that's going to give you some security, that's going to get built, is really based upon a lot of leverage that the individual equity player is using. And depending upon the equity player, they could have a lot of money, but it could just be in the forms of lines of credit. And so you got to watch out for that. So it is a signal that things are great, but understanding what goes on behind the scenes and the questions to ask and just dig a little bit more will do wonders to help you feel more confident. It doesn't make everything absolutely secure, but it will help you to feel a little more confident that, okay, other people are looking at this, right? So I share that with you. So does that make sense? Everyone understand signals? I want to move on because we got a lot of ground to cover. But those are signals that the media ignores. And the takeaway there is the media reports on what happened, following the capital and where the money goes. That's what's going to happen. And when you can position yourself earlier, the better, because when you come in later and it's obvious, by the time there's proof, it's usually too late. By the time there's proof, you're picking up the leftovers of whatever was available, and that spread in return is minimized. The risk is also minimized because you might see what it is that you want to buy and you feel more comfortable. But as I mentioned before, comfort is not safety, okay? And safety is not familiarity. That's a whole different ballgame and a whole different world, all right? Does that make sense? If that makes sense for you guys on TikTok, say, yeah, give me a yes, yes, yes. For those on Zoom in the chat or watching this replay, a comment if you understand what I said makes sense. If it doesn't, push back. I'll be glad to clarify that information. Now, I want to move on to Okay, how does family fall into your decision making to buy property overseas that goes beyond the safety of is there good schools there or great hospitals? Now, this is where this is where moving into a country. This is maybe not so much on the purchasing part. So I'm going to put aside the investor part because this is the one country way challenge. And before you buy product in country, you're certainly gonna have to like want to like the country. So let's dive into this. Having lived in Nicaragua for over 10 years, having lived in Panama for over 6 months, having lived in Mexico for 4 years, the last 20 years, I've lived in 5 different countries. I have 4 children, 2 born in Nicaragua, 1 born in the United States, 1 born in Canada. I had a local Nicaraguan wife, and I've learned Spanish from the ground up. So I come to you right now with some experience of what I see. And the important thing with family and schools and hospitals, when you first start looking for property, you're going to be looking at statistics of safety, statistics, but you need to get out of the statistic mode and try to understand what's happening in the day-to-day mode. And what happens when you move to a new country, of course, you're looking at all these statistics, but you don't really understand that whether the country is safe or not until you're in the country. And you actually forget about those statistics and you start living day to day what it is you experience. And you forget about that stuff. What you start looking more for the kids in the hospitals is not so much are they available because they're everywhere. Most of these countries by now have good hospitals, first class services. You're not going to have any issues. They all run a little bit differently, some public, some private, some more expensive to get in than others. I'll give you an example. In Mexico, I remember going to a resort weekend my wife booked for us. And on the second night, she got like violently ill. And here we are. We live in Mexico. We live in Nuevo Nayarit. We're staying at a hotel resort and an all-inclusive. My wife gets sick. And on the second night, we had to go to the hospital. And the hospital was in Nuevo Nayarit, just down the way, but it was a private hospital. So we walked into the hospital. My wife is sick, and you had to pay $2,500 as a deposit just to walk in the door to be able to get looked at. Now, doesn't mean that what you're going to pay is $2,500, but depending what the lesson there is, make sure you have some credit on your credit card because that's what things cost at these private hospitals. At the end of the day, I think we spent $1,000 in the hospital. She was there almost like 4 hours and she was better. But having said that, knowing what the costs are of these hospitals, that's important. Knowing the schools that you want to go to, that's important. Schools overseas generally are very expensive. I can tell you from experience. In Mexico, well, first in Nicaragua, you could spend anywhere between $200 and $400 a month. In Mexico, you could spend anywhere between $300 to $700 a month on private schools. Most expats don't put their kids into a public school. I always wanted to, but my wife said that probably wasn't a good idea. So we didn't. Now, what happens when you go to buy real estate? Now, I'm coming at you from a resort development, but you might buy real estate in the city, okay, or in a residential development, or in Managua, or in Granada, or Leon, or Matagalpa, or some other city that's not the beach. And when you're with a family, what's going to become important is not so much the schools and the hospitals. It's going to be the development that you're in and other kids that are in and around that development. And you won't know that completely when you move in, but that is what's going to transpire. So, for example, when we moved to Mexico, our kids were 5. My 2 youngest were 5 and 6 years old. And of course, we didn't just let them go run around on their own. We did live in a gated community. I was not worried about the safety. I was more worried about the cars that would drive them by really fast up and down the streets and people looking at their phones and text messaging and not really paying attention to kids on scooters and bikes that are just like whipping through the intersection, like not looking both ways. So it scared us. But where I'm going with this is in the case that your kids speak, let's say English, I'll just use my kids for example, and they have very limited Spanish, what tends to happen is they will migrate towards other kids that speak the same language more than they're going to migrate towards kids that speak, let's say, Spanish, because it's scary for them. It's like the fear of the unknown and failure to some degree. So when you look into a community, trying to find out a little bit about who lives there is going to be really important. Now, my my best advice for you when it comes to family, security, safety, purchasing real estate in a foreign country is look at the condition of a project. If it's in really, really good condition, it generally goes to and speaks to the ability of the owners in that development to pay their maintenance fees and their HOA fees for the development to then be able to afford to look after the property. And that's a really good sign of a healthy development when you can see it looked after. And that attracts a lot of people. And then secondary to that would be the amenities that the project has. In the resort developments that are along the beach, and you'll learn a little bit about this tomorrow, so I won't spoil it. Usually collecting HOA fees is the hardest thing to do because because you're not there all the time, so you don't normally care whether you can enter the property or not unless you have something built and you want to rent it. And depending upon the rules and regulations and the covenants and restrictions, you may or may not be able to enter the property, or the guest that you rent your unit to be able to enter the property. So that could cause a problem. I laugh because in the development that I live in Mexico, at the entrance, they have this huge whiteboard. And they literally put the unit numbers and the last name of the owners on the board to basically shame them into paying. And I can't say that I've seen a name on the board longer than 2 days. So people really don't like that shaming concept, but it works. Now, what that translates into from a resort development standpoint of view is I don't think I would go that far to do that, but understanding what you're buying into and what your money's investing into, the enforceability of the maintenance and the HOA of that particular project, that's important. I'm going to get into more of that tomorrow and the details of it, so I don't want to spoil it, but it is something that you should look for when you're looking to move abroad or purchase property abroad with your family. Look at the condition of the property. And you might think that's obvious, but when you go outside and see other developments that are in lesser condition, the rents are lower, the property valuation is lower, the occupancy rate is a lesser percentage. The ability to resell a property takes longer. So those are all criteria factors that you're going to want to know and be involved in. So does that make sense? If you guys like that and that makes sense and it's something that helped you, it may seem obvious. There's obviously more details I can get into about that, but the key goal there is, remember, this is about talking to your significant other, your spouse. The premise is you don't want to be arguing or convincing or persuading or manipulating someone into agreeing with you to move or buy real estate in a foreign country. These are facts that you just need to know. So when you come at your spouse from a logical standpoint of view, you're simply presenting the information. All right. Because when you're going to get that pushback from your significant other, it's generally not because they don't want to hear what you have to say. It's because what you're saying, you're trying to convince them when they're feeling unsafe, and it's not going to work. And I've seen this happen time and time and time again. And to some degree now, I'll give you an example. As a real estate developer, it is my preference getting on these Zoom calls. Well, let me go back. When I started, there was no iPhone. Okay. Does anybody know? This is a good, who can tell me in the chat what year the iPhone came out? All right. Or on TikTok, you could type into the text. You can show me who can guess what year TikTok came out. What year the iPhone came out? Because that's how far back I go to give you an example of what I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you. And the year was 2007. Back then, the only way to communicate with people was by phone. All right. Or email. And even email wasn't that popular, but it was the primary mode of communication for individuals. And going to conferences, traveling around the world in person and meeting people. And usually, sometimes the couple together are at a conference, most times not. So when you met someone for the first time or you saw them, it really was after they put a deposit down and or came into the country and you met them for the first time. And then you get to talk to people together. Now, with technology, it's my preference to try and speak to the husband and the wife or whatever your designated partners are called at the same time. because what one person hears isn't normally what the other person hears. And it's amazing the feedback that you get from two different people. And I see that right now as I talk to couples on WhatsApp. The husband is asking one thing and the wife is asking another. Two different priorities of what they're thinking. So it is almost unfair to put the burden on you to convince your significant other because you probably don't understand what they're thinking. It's like, who's heard of the book Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus? Okay, I've read that. I read that. But the premise there is, men and women think differently. Men and women have very different concerns, react to stimulation in the environment completely different. And generally, when it comes to purchasing property or talking to your significant other and avoiding that argument, the key here is not to come at it from a position of persuasion, but a position of understanding, because the other person is just simply not feeling safe. And unfortunately, sometimes safe people think the person that wants to feel safe is security or comfort, familiarity. Those are all traps. Okay. Safe is something completely different than what we're teaching about filter and criteria and stress tests and factors that we're talking about today, and how you bring up logical information to present to your significant other that they're going to look at that they can't deny. So we look at evidence-based decision making, as I said yesterday, precision in decision, and to be able to move forward from there. And that works really, really well. So that puts an exclamation point on the whole schools and hospital thing. So let's get into now, what role does lifestyle play in the compatibility of where you are? I had this conversation the other day about an individual that was unhappy with a location that they were in. And at the end of the day, that person ended up leaving where they moved to and went back home. And I was curious why they did that. And so we kept communication, was talking to them. And generally the response was they just felt alone, not connected. In essence, they didn't make any friends. And I said this in another interview that I had, and it really holds true for you today. So when it comes to getting involved in a foreign country and you want to meet new people and you have this idea of this great lifestyle because maybe a buddy of yours or a relative is having this wonderful time with their property in a foreign country, and you believe the same thing's going to happen to you, the key here is fit. Not every country is a fit for everybody. Not just following someone else's plan is the plan for you, all right? And to build upon that, what happens in these countries, the smaller the country, the more private the communities are. Now, I don't know about you, but you could drop into these international countries and just want to hang out in the expat communities and you're just talking to local Americans or Canadians or whatever background you have, and you stay in your little community. But the real fun is getting out into the market, into the culture, and experiencing what it has. I can tell you, culture is like a drug. Okay, you want more and more of it. And what happens is, it's kind of really interesting because, and you need to watch out for this. You might find yourself talking a little bit bad about your own culture, okay, which is not a good thing. But it just happens because you're so in love with this new experience that it overwhelms you. Now, that's when you first get into country. When you move there and the reality of day-to-day life starts to set in, as I said yesterday, your routine starts to play an important part of where in which you're going to choose your development. But to go beyond that, when you're looking to fit in and you have a lifestyle that you're active and you want to be amongst groups, when you don't take the initiative to go up to strangers in these foreign countries, whether it be locals or the expat communities, you really can't expect them to invite you, because that's not how it works, okay? Even in a group environment, you could look for group nights or introduction nights or welcome parties, and that might be an exception. But if you're just hanging at home waiting for your phone to ring to invite you to some party where you want to meet more people, unless you go up to those people and say, like, hey, what time can I show up at? Or where's the party? Or is it okay if I bring a friend? You're gonna get bored, disillusioned, lonely. And moving back home is not failure. Okay. A lot of people I talk to who move back home and they don't succeed in the country where they are, they feel like they failed or it didn't work or the country sucked or it wasn't right for me. But it's not that. It just simply means that it was the wrong country and you didn't maybe make an extra effort to get into the culture and introduce yourself the way in which you wanted to be received. And that goes back to the first day when I talked about the criteria and the filter is quickly eliminate 50 to 75 countries just by determining what culture you want to end up in. Like I said, whether it's Chinese or it's Filipino or it's Vietnamese or it's Nicaraguan, meaning Latin America, or it could be European and Spain. Pick your culture and wind down the countries from there. But the lifestyle compatibility of where you are should be something that you pay attention to, because if you're looking to move somewhere or buy property somewhere, that's going to determine the market of the people that are going to be attracted to you. Now, this challenge that you're in today, this video presentation, wherever you're watching it from, it builds upon day 1 and day 2. So there's some key critical things that not understanding or not knowing by itself, it might seem like that's hanging out there. So I really encourage you to watch day 1 and day 2 so you understand where that builds upon, because we talked about the market selection of a project, the branding of a project, the ability to resell your project and who's going to want it. That was all really, really important information that we covered yesterday. All right. So I'm going to close on that question. So does that make sense? Does it make sense that when you want to choose the place where you want to live, that you need to, at least on your part, exercise some discretion and get out there and introduce yourself, not expect people to come to you, and that you don't quickly judge a country that it wasn't right for you because nobody came and talked to you. All right. And when you go back home, you don't go back home with your tail between your legs like you failed. It just may have been may have been the right fit for you. And you'd be surprised if you go back to the same country with a different mental attitude and you start seeing things in a different light, you might just experience something that didn't happen the first time. You're going to be glad you did. Now, let's go on. Let's go into more real estate. Let's dial back on the lifestyle stuff, all right? Because that's important. We're about midway through the challenge and midway through today's presentation. And so I'm really going to focus now. We're going to shift a little bit now to real estate and what does it mean to choose land before the headlines. And then I'm going to end the presentation where how you explain this whole thing to a skeptical partner. All right. So that's where we're going. All right. That's where we're going to land the plane. But let's focus on how you choose land before the headlines. Okay. Now, when you see the headlines, as I mentioned before, it usually means not that it's too late, because some people love those headlines because it provides comfort to you. But I'll repeat it. Comfort means that you're arriving late to the party. And arriving late to the party means that you're picking up the leftovers of what is available. And how you choose that land before the headlines dates back to the capital and watching it where it moves. Now, I'm going to really push in now. I'm going to assume you know what country you want to be in. I'm going to assume that you have some idea now how to look at projects and a country's political system to assess the structure and how well it performed during difficult times. I'm going to assume now that you're at a position where you've done some research, you like what you've seen, and you're ready to dig a little deeper. But what does that mean? What it means is you're going to have to get down and dirty and pick up the phone or get on a Zoom call and talk to people. Now, how do you go about talking to projects and developments around the world? Very, very difficult. That's where narrowing your countries come into play. I'll give you an example. In Nicaragua today, I spent 3 months looking at 9 different countries across Latin America and Mexico. And I analyzed every single region of the country, compared all the home sites, lots, and condos, looked at over 2,000 real estate listings to get a sense of what the hell was going on in the marketplace. And I generally do that every year because things change quickly. And from a Nicaragua specific standpoint of view, or let me dial back, nobody does that. It's impossible. You're not going to spend 3 months doing that. It's simply not going to happen. So you hope to God that you can find information out there that'll quickly distill that, whether you have to pay for it and it'll be worth every cent, providing the information is good, or you get it for free. So in our case, I'm not sure how you found this challenge, whether it was on Facebook or any of the different areas that we're promoting, or you're on our list because you're interested in our real estate, or you got one of these things, which was called the Nicaragua Brief. And this type of information, and this goes back to how you choose line before the headlines, when you can find information and data, for example, the people who are interested in Nicaragua, who are coming down into the country, fellow investors like yourself who are interested in purchasing land, I show them the 13 regions across Nicaragua, multiple development projects within each region, the comparable types of lots, whether it be golf course, ranch, ocean view, beach, the types of condominiums, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms, the homes, 3, 4, 5, 6 bedrooms, and where they're located and what the average price is. Now, for someone to give you that for free is amazing. Okay. So when you want that, I'm glad to give it to you. Just put in the comments you want it. Okay. And I'll send it to you. But look for that. So when you're looking at projects, whether it's in Panama, Costa Rica, Brazil, Peru, okay, anywhere, any development, ask the developer for their comparative market analysis of projects in the country. Basically, who's your competition? All right. They should be able to supply that you with no problem. Most won't. Because they think it's some secret sauce, or in the case that they give you this information on the pricing of other projects, they're simply going to disappear and never come back. Those are the people who are insecure. You probably don't want to go there anyway. Or the developer may not even have that, which is another problem in itself. But this is a filter, okay? So it doesn't matter whether you follow an international living, a live and invest overseas, an escape artist, okay? Wherever you're getting your information about what is going to influence you about a project for you to decide or a country to move to, write that email, get on the chat, send a direct message, ask them for their comparative market analysis, see what they say, see what they send you. Because when they send it to you, you just saved a whole bunch of information. You saved yourself a whole bunch of time, and you have all the information condensed into one spot. And it should speak well of the developer who will give you that information. Now, it's not to say that you should just buy from that developer because they gave it to you, but it's a filter, okay? So that's a way of finding out information before the headlines, because once you determine what country you want to be in, or a couple of countries, it won't take long for you to figure out what's going on inside that country, all right? You may not know exactly where the investors are putting money, but you'll definitely know where the government is putting money, to be able to see if that's a signal for you, like we talked about in the first point of this presentation, that you want to pay attention to. Now, headlines. It's funny because I thought about this question last night, and then I was doing some sample research around the internet just on that question, what's happening in different countries. Now, I kind of already knew, but I wanted to see what comes up on Google search. And what I found was, this is my own shameless plug, okay? So you have to excuse me. I like it. I'm proud of it. In Nicaragua, I'm really happy that back in September, there was a company called One Media, and they were acting on behalf of the LA Times. And they went and came into country for close to 6 weeks, and they did an exhaustive country profile on different industries and what's happening, and all the investment and the investment opportunities that are taking place in Nicaragua. And they've done this in other countries as well. So wasn't just a first thing in only Nicaragua. But from a real estate standpoint of view, we're one of very few that I was interviewed to get my take on the country and what is happening. Now, this is not to say, you can go read it. It's online, and it's about Grupo Mariana. But the important thing here is, we talked about how do you find land before the headlines. When you're looking at projects within a country, when you dig deep, you can very quickly begin to realize that the barriers to entry are really high. What does that mean? The quickest way to see what's happening in a country is not by just Googling anything. Generally speaking, you could probably look up a Coldwell Banker, a Remax, um, Century 21, any of the big real estate players that may be operating an office in the country. And generally, they will have most of the listings of the bigger developments on their site. Now, it doesn't mean those are the only developments taking place, but it'll give you a quick sense of what is happening. There are other things you need to be cautious about that I talked about yesterday, and I'll talk more about tomorrow about selecting the right real estate agent. But you'll at least see product that is being resold in the marketplace, and sometimes even new product that's coming into the market. And I want to key in on the last part of what I just said. I said new product coming into where? Into the market. Because that's the new construction stuff. So it's very easy to go buy something that's already built. I'll just assume you have a budget and you have a price range and you have a comfort zone, and you'll just pay whatever price is there, and good luck to you. Okay. There's things you should know, but good luck to you. For the most part, the people who are talking to you today or watching this video are likely just getting started with international real estate, may not have purchased a property before. Some might not even have a passport, have no idea where to start, not speak the language, have no idea, no friends, no family, no security of knowing anything about a country, but they just know that they're looking for a plan B. They just know that they want to get some money out of wherever jurisdiction they are. And real estate is a really solid asset, particularly beachfront. So they start looking. Now, not all beachfront is created equal. Now, when you look at the development listings on real estate sites in the new construction, it's a kind of a good signal that what's coming. You can kind of get a sense of the inventory. So if you're going to buy something and your goal, or I say when you're going to buy something and your goal is to, let's say, flip it and resell it, you kind of want to know what is your competition. And so the ability for you to see what listings are out there are important. So it's a very fast way for you to see what's up and coming. And then the projects that look interesting are likely the one that's going to capture some attention, might attract some capital into the future, or start building upon what it is that they've already started to finish and go further. Now, I think that's enough for land before headlines. It kind of, the goal here is just for you to remember that when you see those headlines, it will give you comfort, but you are a little late to the party. Okay. If you want to get in before the headlines, you have to do a little bit of research and take a little bit more risk, but it's going to be worth it, providing you want to get the property of your choice in the development that you want, in the location, and the product availability that you can purchase within your budget. All right. Now, let's move on. The last part of the presentation today that I want to answer for you is, how do you explain this whole process to your partner? And I've been building upon this and cluing in on some of the details. But the real process here is, don't try to convince your partner. Get your partner online with whoever you talk to that convinced you, okay? Because whatever you say, okay, it's going to go in one ear and out the other, and you're more than likely not going to address the issues that you want your partner to know, because they're thinking about something else. You're not a mind reader. So having your partner on a Zoom call like this with the developer or the real estate agent, the ability to interact and get questions answered immediately is very, very helpful. So you shouldn't be the one trying to convince your significant other, because I can tell you probably 80% of the people fail. In the case that we were more successful with the people that didn't purchase from us, we probably would have sold 500 properties with all the leads that we have in. But the number of times I've heard, like, it's just not the right time, or my wife doesn't think so, or my husband is not ready to learn more, I'm just too busy. So many excuses. But the reality is there's something missing, and it's a level of safety in understanding what's important. And safety is not familiarity. That's what safety is going to be confused with. And familiarity is not comfort. All right. Safety is completely different. Safety is structure. Okay. Are we going to lose our money, honey? Right. Is the development going to get finished? Where's the money come from? What happens in a financial crash? If there's another pandemic, how long are we going to have to hold for? What's the timeline for construction? What happens if they start construction and they stop because the contractor disappeared? We're purchasing into this property. It's got a golf course, and we're putting money into the HOA that's supposed to look after the golf course, but there's a problem collecting money. So now there's no money to maintain the golf course and it's falling apart. And now our property values are going down. I mean, like, well, what is that, 6 or 7 things I just listed right there? Those are all real things. Okay. Now, your significant other, the person might not be thinking that. They might be thinking about other things, but if just even one of those things are a thought, it's enough to derail your whole dream of what it is that you want to do. Because after all, you just spent all this time looking and researching. You've convinced yourself with the information that was given to you that this is right. You're all excited to go talk to your partner to get approval. Okay. Very seldom do I see husbands or wives making decisions to spend $100, $200, $300,000 and just do it. Okay. So there's a conversation that's going to take place. So being armed with the right knowledge to present the information is important in which way you come at it. So don't try to convince your skeptical partner. First, ask them what might they feel uncomfortable with and go about it from that position, and try to bring protection to the conversation versus the upside and return, because that never works. Okay. Unless your significant other is like a logical investment type orientated person where it's like, tell me about the details of the cash flow from the rentals and what is the average cost of closing and the fees of lawyers and what's the cost to hook up the water, things like that, and property taxes every year. Very seldom do people ask those questions. Okay. It's usually many other things. So I'm going to end there because that's enough information. We covered like signals to watch for going into the country. We talked about the lifestyle compatibility of when you're inside the country. Is this right for you? The safety in the schools and how that plays into the part of selecting where it is you want to go. I talked a little bit near the end, just to recap, talking to your partner as I say goodbye to the audience and the audience on TikTok and the people watching. And for the people watching this replay, I'll remind you again, if you're just joining in late, you're fast forwarding to the end. My name is Kevin Fleming from Grupo Mariana. I'm a developer in Nicaragua that's working on a project called Playa Mariana. That's our 923-acre resort with 2 kilometers of beachfront, 8 kilometers outside of Masachapa along the coastal highway that's currently under construction. I've been a developer for 20 years, married to a local Nicaraguan for 20 years, been involved in Nicaragua for 22 in regards to international real estate development. We've had the fortunate pleasure of traveling around the world, presenting Nicaragua to 100 different properties, providing Nicaragua at 100 different stages. We've been featured in international press, such as the LA Times recently, and the New York Times, and the National Herald Tribune. We have approximately 66 clients that invest over $10 million, transferred over 100 different titles, and everything in this one country away challenge. Okay, I'm so excited. This one country away challenge is to help you learn how to buy real estate overseas safely, quickly, easily, and more importantly, avoid the common mistakes that people make. And I'm here and have been here behind the scenes, trying to share experiences that I've had behind the scenes that likely nobody's going to tell you, and give you some tidbits of information that are going to help you to, one, avoid the mistakes, but two, also understand that there's 2 worlds going on in real estate development. There's what you see in the pretty brochures, and there's what happens outside of that, all the crap that goes on that developers have to deal with, both good, bad, and indifferent. So with that, I'm going to bring this presentation to an end. Once again, thank you for watching the presentation to the end. I encourage you to go down below in the comments, and when you have additional questions about the single most important question you have about real estate, enter it into the comments or the chat or wherever you're watching this, and keep an eye out for the replay because that's going to be out soon. So thank you very much. I'm Kevin Fleming signing off. Have a great day.